What's up, fight fans? It is Monday, the 15th of January, 2018, and this is the Monday Morning Analyst here on MMAfighting.com. I'm the host of this podcast. My name is Luke Thomas. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Okay, so what do we normally do on the podcast? We break down from a technical perspective the action that happened over the weekend, which is what we're going to do. But as you know, I'm trying to experiment with maybe some new formats to the podcast. And I asked you guys last time, do you like the new setup? The old setup was a big review of all the action over the weekend, then some look at the technicalities in the second segment, and then a look at what's going to be up in the week ahead in the third. And here's what you guys basically told me. Most of you were in favor of the new format, but there were some that said if it's just the new format, that's not as interesting to me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to split the difference with you. I am still going to keep to the more or less the new format where we spend a little bit more time to really make this about the second segment, but I'm going to have some big picture concept stuff and some extra addendums in the first segment so that it's not just something we pass over. We have a little bit of talk in there, maybe about some big picture stuff or even just a particular thing that I noticed. Just some more itemized discussion points. So if you want to see my UFC St. Louis post-fight special, you can do that on my YouTube channel. You can check it out right here. It'll be up for link and for available. If you want to hear my views on the whole card, you can check that out. Let's go into some of those addendum notes that I did not get to here that I'd like to get to here. First things first, I went back and I rewatched Jeremy Stephens versus Doo Ho Choi. Now, you'll recall last night when I was going through it, I said I didn't really understand what the value was of the stance switching. Not to say that there wasn't any, it wasn't abundantly clear to me at first. So I went back and I watched this morning, figured it out. What was the value of the stance switching? There was one point where he hit a stance switch and then was able to go to the body with a body kick, but that really, I don't think, was the gist. Why did Doo Ho Choi win the first and then lose the second, ultimately getting stopped in the second? In the first, he was always, you saw Paul Felder mention, always outside of range. The punches were just like tipping his nose from Jeremy Stephens because he was always able to back out. But he was backing out when he had plenty of space. He was only really going laterally as he got backed up into the fence, which very rarely happened. There wasn't a lot of that in that first round. So he's able to pop the jab, leg kick, and then back out as any kind of pursuit from Jeremy Stephens happened. That didn't exactly happen in the second round. A couple of things I've noticed. What Jeremy Stephens was able to do was with the stance switching, he was able to get Doo Ho Choi to keep backing up because Doo Ho Choi was watching this, waiting for something to happen, to anticipate it, to get out of the way, to strike, to do whatever he was going to do. But in the process, he's still moving, still moving, still moving, still backing up. So by that time, he got behind the two black lines, and then Jeremy Stephens was able to trap him. Now, it's a little bit more than that. As I mentioned, one of the ways he was able to back him up was he would push into him this way. Doo Ho Choi would back up. He would switch stances, put a body kick on him, which would force even more of an escalation of evasion there. But really what he was doing was just trying to force that linear backing up on Doo Ho Choi, and it worked. Once he got Doo Ho Choi behind the two black lines and they were slugging it out, that was really all she wrote. You'll note that in the second round, it was a kick to the face that got Doo Ho Choi to push Stephens behind the two black lines, but Stephens was able to reverse fortune at that point. And when Stephens started putting it on him, when they began to exchange, the leg kicks of Doo Ho Choi stopped. He began to back up even more and more into the fence. And once you go into the fence with a big explosive veteran striker like Jeremy Stephens, whatever direction you're going to go, he's going to catch you. Choi was already circling to his own left, to Stephens' right before. Stephens had missed on a shot. Second time he came around to do it, Stephens crushed him. That really was the value of the stance switching. That's really why ultimately Doo Ho Choi lost. He looked fine in that first round, but he was going backing up straight way too much, and that stance switching enabled Stephens to extend the backing up of Doo Ho Choi to the point where then his mobility was limited. Once Choi's mobility was limited, that's all she wrote. All right. What do you want to say? Update on Paige VanZant versus Jessica Rose Clark. Paige VanZant later took to Instagram and posted a x-ray of her arm. It was, in fact, broken. Now, I've got a lot of thoughts about what that means. It's a little hard for me to judge exactly, overly negative about how she looked, but she didn't look great even before that, and there's some other decisions she made that I just don't quite understand. But, of course, you can check that out on my post-fight special. Also, very, very quickly about Kamaru Usman and Emil Meek. If I didn't make it clear in my post-fight special, I thought Meek looked about as good as you can, given some of the circumstances and the technical skills deficit that he was working from insofar as wrestling is concerned. I can't stress it enough. I mentioned it last night. I'm going to mention it again. I really believe that, we talk about the talents of Jose Aldo. One of the things he doesn't get a lot of credit for, but he needs it, because what you're seeing now in MMA is guys like Jose Aldo who can break the hands of somebody who gets behind him, a la that kind of referee's position that I've talked about ad nauseum. It's a huge deal. The next frontier is going to be the next guy or team or whoever that really excels and figures out new methods or just finds ways to execute on hand breaking, grip breaking, any kind of breaking of the hands, or dominant defensive and offensive wrist control. That's really going to be key. We're living in an age now where guys are doing a really good job from either turtle or even standing, avoiding the whizzer, getting a waist lock around them, and then using that for pulling, for pushing, for turning, for tripping, for riding, for lifting. And the guy who's getting his waist locked, the lock isn't so tight that you're going to suffocate, but you can't break it, you can't get away. The guy who figures out, or whoever, the team, whatever, Jose Aldo, I don't know what his secret is other than it just seems naturally good at it, but that is going to be key. Breaking the hands is just so, I cannot overstate its importance. It's absolutely critical. Two more notes. Number one, we're going to take a look at first Jessica Ai and Kalindra Faria, that leg locking exchange that they had, and sort of see what we can learn about that. Last note about this, what I really wanted to focus in on was Darren Elkins and Michael Johnson for the second segment. Michael Johnson did not look bad at 145. I don't know that 145 is necessarily the key for his success going forward, but it didn't appear to be a problem either. So something to be said for that. And he looked awesome in the first round. He was so good at getting his down blocking. His down blocking was like lightning quick, right? So really good stuff there. But he just kind of got overwhelmed in the second round. And so the funny thing was, if you're going to drop a weight class, that should confer some physical benefits. And I don't really know that it did exactly. I mean, we kind of would assume that he would have a speed advantage over Darren Elkins. Maybe not as much as we thought that he actually ended up having, but some kind. And I just don't know that he was trapped underneath and had a lot of difficulty dealing with the physicality of Darren Elkins. But there's a certain style what Darren Elkins is doing, and I mentioned it. Mike Santiago was doing it as well. Guys who will just lean heavy on you on crossbody half guard and then wait for you to make some kind of mistake, either from a guillotine sequence from standing or some other kind of a way to win in the scramble. And you're going to see that here. So let's do this. Let's go to the second segment. First, we're going to take a look at why the leg locks maybe didn't work as well as they could have between Ai and Faria. And then let's take a look at some of the things Darren Elkins did in the second round. Because look, Darren Elkins has this reputation as a guy who's just tough and find ways to win. And that's true. It's quite obviously true. But it's really not fair, because there's a lot more to him than that. I think that he has, a limited game, right? Not the best stand-up in the world. But the part of the game he's good at, including some of these sequences here you're seeing, where, yes, he can wrestle against the fence, but he can wrestle not against the fence as well. And he's got a very, very, very difficult top game to deal with, especially if you don't have the fence. Let's take a look at that now. Okay, so before we look at Darren Elkins and what he was able to do to Michael Johnson, let's take a quick look, if we can, at what Jessica Ai was doing with Kalindra Faria in terms of their leg locks. Now, I'm going to make a statement up front about this podcast and about this segment in particular. Number one, I'm not an expert, okay? I have I've been in gyms for a long time, but, there's going to be somebody out there. I am, especially when it comes to this topic, as a general disclaimer, I think that these podcasts are helpful and they're informative, but let's be clear about this. Not an expert. If I was, I'd be in there doing it as opposed to just talking about it here on YouTube, number one. Number two, with leg locks in particular, this is not an area that I feel very comfortable with getting into anything much more than sort of really basic to moderate details. There's going to be a lot of people who know significantly more about leg locks than me. So what I really encourage you to do is get out there and start looking up some of these terms. But what I'm going to try to do in this video, just a little bit, is give you some basic concepts and sort of basic general awareness about some things we are looking for. Understand that we're not necessarily nitpicking here what these two fighters did right or wrong. we're just trying to identify like maybe why some of these things didn't work. There's a couple of times where they got a little bit close. There was a lot of times where they were not very close, and there's some good reasons for that. The third caveat that I would say is, though, they were on the ground because Jessica I got kicked in the head. Like, being overly punitive in our analysis doesn't seem really fair. And you could even argue, while the leg locks themselves left a little bit to be desired, I think initiating that leg lock sequence enabled Jessica I to recover mentally and physically, and she ultimately won the fight. So were they the best leg locks I've ever seen? No. Did it look like she'd been training with the Danaher Death Squad? Not exactly. And there are some things we can point to say that this wasn't necessarily all that great, but in the end, there was some kind of value to it. Now, one of the main things you need to understand is there are a set of positions that you can find yourself in with leg locks, and they all start from one basic position. This is a little bit of an oversimplification, but there's a position called Ashi Garami. And Ashi Garami, and there's actually different kinds of Ashi Garami, but the basic Ashi Garami is your leg stuffed here under my arm. I'm kind of sitting back on it. Well, not sitting back, but I've got it controlled. Right? My outside leg is going to come around and my heel is going to be in your hip, and my other leg is going to be under, with my instep, your hamstrings. Right? So everything is, I'm actually not extended. I'm actually nice and tight for the most part with Ashi Garami. And there's all different kinds of setups. If you want to think of another way to understand Ashi Garami, if someone stands up, it's more or less a single leg X guard. And you can understand what would be an overhook as opposed to this. It'd be kind of what Conor was doing to Nate Diaz, the Kuru guard, although that was a little different because the way you have to step into the middle of the leg changes things. But it's basically, that's what it is, right? I've got hooking one arm, or I've got one arm hooking around the leg, right? Sort of sliding into that groove, keeping it nice and tight, but not like squeezing super hard, because that's not the way you really get anything. I'm going to have my outside leg on the same side I'm gripping around your leg. I'm going to come around, boom, foot right in the hip, and it's not going to be like this. It's going to be angled out to match your hip angle. And then my other leg is going to come under and sort of hook your hamstrings. Now, why are these things happening, right? Again, there's going to be people who understand Ashi Garami a lot better than me. But for the purposes of this discussion, the basic idea is that I want to control your leg. I want to have some control of your hip and mobility. I want to be able to control how you can roll, which directions you can roll. I want to slow that roll. I want to be ahead in the roll, and I want to hide my other leg under yours. So it's control of your leg, control of your hips, hiding my own leg, the one that's vulnerable in this case, because you can't really get a heel. If someone's really got a good Ashi Garami and they've got your foot in the hip, I mean, you can, like, mess with it, but you can't really do a whole lot with it. And then the other leg that is free, I'm hiding that under your leg, and I may be using that to slow which way you move or to guide you in some certain cases. Now, that's an oversimplification. There are many different kinds of Ashi Garami. Outside Ashi Garami, like behind Ashi Garami. There's 50-50, which is a different thing. But Ashi Garami is sort of if you want to think of it as the nucleus of a leg locking position. What I'll do is I'll put a video or an article explaining Ashi Garami in much better detail from somebody else in the description box. But that's what you need to think of as this is the if you're going to drive into the leg lock highway, your car needs to be Ashi Garami. Otherwise, I don't know how far you're really going to go. I'm not saying you can't get from A to B, but it's kind of like driving blindfolded or drunk or something. It's really just kind of an essential, basic, but critical position to then set up all the other attacks. There are people who don't necessarily use Ashi Garami who could be good leg lockers. I'm just speaking in terms of generalities, okay? That's something you need to always keep in mind with Ashi Garami. The problem in this fight is I don't know that we ever see Ashi Garami one time. Again, Jessica I had been kicked in the head, for crying out loud. Let's cut her a little bit of a break. But if we want to sort of assess some of the things that went right and went wrong, let's look at some of this tape. I'm going to walk you through it from what I see from a very basic perspective, but just some things to keep in mind for future leg lock sequences. I had some folks asking me, how close were some of these? The answer is there was a couple times, especially on those inverted heel hooks, that were really, they were getting some traction, but more or less, none of them were very, very close. And they kept putting themselves in danger through the whole thing. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, you can see here, she is trying to set up some kind of leg lock attempt. You can see the right leg of Jessica was trying to get across the hip, but you can see she goes too far. She's now on the far side hip, which gives the inverted heel hook to both. Now, one of the things you're going to see throughout the course of this video, just keep watching as I talk, you're going to see, and a lot of people do this. Number one, they don't quite get a good bite on the heel hook, so the arm slips off constantly. The other one you're going to see is they kind of try to rip the leg across their body. They try to rip the ankle across their body, which is not correct. You really want to go to the ankle, which could be turning very far down, attaching it to yourself with a nice bite, and then turning with the torso. We've talked about that with a number of submissions. If you have a Kimura from you're on top, let's say, you want to attach it to your body, and then you want to turn, because that's going to be a way more powerful structure to get what you want. So here's the thing you can see here. You can see Faria sort of getting over. She's still kind of on her side. There's not really enough bite there. And I want you to pay attention. Look, they're both leaning back, which is going to limit the ability to really get a nice bite on a leg like that. And their other legs are always exposed. You notice how there's never Ashi Garami? Like in this case, the left leg would need to be tucked under for Jessica Ai, the right leg of Faria, right? And again, you know, she's getting banged on here. You have to really be very forgiving, but just sort of trying to point that out. You'll notice that they always are going back and forth with leg locks because neither really ever does anything to protect the other leg. Look, both of them have their other legs exposed, so both of them can just reach over and grab. Now that heel hook right there, you can see is a little bit, there's some bite on this one, which causes Faria to move, but it's not tight. She's leaning back, she's twisting with the arms as opposed to really gluing it to herself and getting over, and there's no control of the hip, there's no real control of the other leg at all, and that's why it didn't work. It was a nice, it had a decent bite on it, but not a whole lot more. So let's sort of watch a little bit more of this and you'll get the general idea. Again, she sits up here. Now you could go to 50-50. Here's the interesting part about 50-50 from this one. Look, you can see her legs are crossed. That's not so bad because it would protect you. She goes belly down, but there's just not enough. If you're extending out, you don't have enough of a bite. Extending out doesn't really aid you in this particular way. So this is a little bit better. Faria gets a couple times. She gets the double wrap where you can get someone's leg and then you put another leg on top of it, and then you can go and then through the heel hook, you can control both and get a nice submission, but that's it requires a significant degree of expertise. Here you can see the 50-50 is wide open from, look at that. She was able to go for the inverted here. She doesn't get it. Faria doesn't, but Jessica Ai never crosses her legs underneath. When you're in 50-50, that's kind of an essential thing. You want some kind of leg crossing, and you want to have the bottom one on top of the top one to prevent if you're going to be on the side. Now, if you're just going to sort of face 50-50, then you just cross like a triangle. But I'm just pointing out there are certain patterns that need to be established and certain protections. Now here you can see she crossed the leg. That's better, right? Now she can't be heel hooked. You can say, what about the right leg of Jessica Ai? Could that be heel hooked? Not really, not really. And then she can use this to come up, and then eventually she decides to go for a straight armbar here. She pushes away, but she pushes away, watch it, she'll push away in this, but too far, and Faria just slips out. So there's not much there. So what's the basic lesson here in all of this? The basic idea is that they had a couple of interesting bites along the way, but they never really started from a clear Ashi Garami position. They never were able to really establish an Ashi Garami position where they can control the hip, control the leg, and then prevent their own legs from being attacked. That's really what you notice here. There's never really a moment where they're able to say, hey, you know, I can attack you and you can't really do anything but defend. They just kept trading attacks back and forth because there was a looseness to the position. We've already explained the caveats, but there's a little bit of a helpful understanding in trying to interpret what happened between Jessica Ai and Kalindra Faria. As I mentioned before, Darren Elkins has this rep as a guy who, you know, just sort of takes a beating and then finds a way to, you know, do more or less average things when people get tired. And the first part is true. He does take a beating early, and he has an incredible durability that is just hard to overstate. But it's not true that he does average things. We should give this guy some praise. I kind of feel like it's long overdue. I'm not sure that I've done enough of it, to be quite honest. So let's take a moment here to say thanks to Darren Elkins for the kind of magic, frankly, that he brings to the octagon. And let's take also a moment to really look at some of the skills that he has. Part of them, I don't know how much you could replicate and teach somebody else. I'm not sure that you would want to teach someone else to do some of the things that he does, but some things you would. So let's go and take a look at these now if we can. All right, here he is taking on Michael Johnson. Now, as you know, this is round 2 here you're looking at. First round, not exactly a great round for Darren Elkins, but here's what he does. All right, let's take a look here. So if you look at his posture, he's constantly level changing. I don't know if Michael Johnson wanted to kick him because of the level changing, or he just happened to kick him while the level changing coincided, but he does. And so you can see this ends up being really bad for Michael Johnson because look at the body here of Darren Elkins. It's on top of the leg, which enables him to adjust his grip. As I mentioned before, the down blocking previously by Michael Johnson was really good, but he gets caught here. And you would say, if you, by the way, look at this. Look how far away the body is now away from the leg. If you're not good at this takedown's done. But for someone like Darren Elkins, he runs the pipe, right? Now you see Michael Johnson hand plant. What do you think is going to be next? Of course, it's going to be the left arm to cover the hips, just like that. And he's going to sit him down, bring his hands together. Okay, so now he brings him down. I got to say, the top game of Darren Elkins is excellent. It's not super sophisticated, but what it is complete. He knows what kinds of conditions he has to establish in terms of breaking and controlling your posture. He probably has a few submissions that he looks for in different circumstances. If he needs to scramble, he can. And in the meantime, he has just a real comfortable series of ground and pound to control, ground and pound to submission attempt, ground and pound to different kinds of ground and pound. Like everything is a real connected system. So here we go. Now you see Michael Johnson trying to get to his side. That is the correct thing. But this is what I talked about in the Mike Santiago fight. It was a little bit different because he was setting up a guillotine series, but it's the same principle. Look at the body here of Darren Elkins. It's on top of this underhook. If we could somehow take the camera and go around the other side and look, you would see that Michael Johnson has the underhook, which is what he needs. And in fact, that other same side leg is also on the outside, which is also what you need to be able to get up or maybe double off and take the other person down. Here's the problem. The body weight just smashes that hook down, and it keeps the head of Michael Johnson on the other side of the underhook. Now, you can get up with your head on the other side of the underhook, but it's going to be a lot harder. You kind of want to be on the same side if at all possible. And what he's doing here is he's saying you can have the underhook, this illusory sense that you're doing something, but I'm going to put body weight on top of it. I'm going to slip my shoulders, my neck. I'm going to drive into it, and I'm going to keep you not only flat, I'm going to make that underhook essentially just work against you. I'm going to pin it to your body rather than it being a tool for inside control to create space for yourself, right? So now you see more of the same. Now, some of this you're going to see from Johnson is he's tucking underneath Darren Elkins to avoid punishment. And he does that to varying degrees of success, but that thought itself I don't think is the worst thing ever. Because you're going to see he's going to try and get to his elbow. Look at that, right? This is correct. This is technically correct. But he's so far on the other side because this body weight and this leech is on top of you here in Darren Elkins. He can't really do a whole lot. Plus, once you begin to frame, Darren Elkins starts going for your wrists. Right? And even if he doesn't get his wrist, here you see him trying to pass the wrist behind him, which he doesn't get. And in fact, Michael Johnson gets it. But this is what I mean when I say he's got a system. Oh, I want to go for your wrists. Michael Johnson prevents it. Oh, you're going to prevent my wrist from sliding through? Yeah, I'm just going to put a knee there. This is what I mean. Like everything is connected all the way around. Is it super sophisticated? No, but it's shut down. He's a shutdown corner, man. That is what I mean. If I can make it the best description I can make is taking the beating early in the fight, notwithstanding his top game. He's a shutdown cornerback. That's what he is, man. It's amazing to watch. Okay, so now the hand of Michael Johnson is stuck here. He gets it out. He gets a Z guard in on that hip a little bit. Or excuse me, a knee shield on that hip a little bit. He pushes away, but you can see Mike. He never gets too far away. Body weight always on top. The left leg here, or excuse me, the left arm of Elkins, you can't see it's wrapping the leg, so that he can't really like extending belly out and get to his base. And this one, he's going to just try and need a cross face to put him back down, or he'll come behind the head just like that too. Just always got nice, solid control. Base is low, not on his toes at this point, but probably feels like he doesn't need to be, right? And now look at this. Look how far away he is here. Shoulders kind of on top of the chest almost. Now look how far he is. Creeps up right up on it. Sneaks up and occupies that space. Puts the weight on him. Look at this. Look at that arm. Michael Johnson has the underhook. It is of no value to him. Or very little anyway. Right? So then he tries to grab the wrist and put it behind his head. I'm not sure if he's trying to do that. That one was a curious one. I've never seen that, which believe me, I'm not saying it's wrong. I just don't know exactly what the value of it is because it might stop them from beating on you, but then your hand is occupied. So maybe it's like a temporary thing, but just something to note. He actually grabs the wrist and puts it behind his head, for a temporary respite, I think, from the beating he was taking there, right? But eventually he goes back down, and of course, what did you see Darren Elkins do? Crossface. Now look, pay attention to this. The knee is on the outside of the arm. That's better for Michael Johnson. Now, I'm not saying this is an amazing spot. I'm not saying that. But this is better than having your elbows separated from your body, right? There's a value to having your elbows in tight and then access to your hands as a line of defense. Okay, so he sits up, and you can see he's got that underhook, but he's on the wrong side because the weight is just on top of him, right? He puts this arm to shove him back down, and when he does, what do you see Michael Johnson do? He cross faces that he gets, not cross, so he prevents the crossface by getting an elbow inside. But what do you notice between this photo and this photo? Let's see if you know. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's the big glaring change? It's this. Look at all that space in the middle. So what do you think Darren Elkins is going to do? Whoop. He's going to push him down and cover it. Right? You create space, he'll just cover it. And now you see him cross-facing here. He doesn't do a whole lot with it at this very moment. Just kind of beats him up, forces reactions, controls him. Now what he does is he's going to, look at his base. It's face down. Now he's going to switch his base. But look at him lean. Look at all that weight sagged on top. And before, Michael Johnson was at least on a side. Now he's flat on his back. That is, wow, very, very, very bad place to be. Okay? Now, if you need to regroup for a second, it's not the end of the world. But all things, if you're asking, like, what's better, being on your shoulder, on your side, or being flat on your back, I can't imagine there's going to be a single person who's ever trained in their life who's going to tell you that this is a better position, because it's not. Especially when you got this guy using his head as a post. He's controlling the arm there, right? Let's see what he goes from here. Now he goes for the crossface. He's going to bring this other hand around, either between the leg or behind here, to really flatten him out and control the hips. Now, go back and look here very quickly. Michael Johnson tries something that I think is actually probably okay. He sticks his hand underneath. Now, he doesn't pull Darren Elkins to him. Darren Elkins kind of walks up here and takes that. And I actually don't mind this because he wasn't going to get up by framing off of his elbow and off of his hand from the underhook, which is a traditional way of getting up, right? We all saw that. He was had his head on the wrong side. The weight was sagging down. It's just that Darren Elkins is just a nightmare on top from this position. So he tries basically like a deep half sweep. That's really what he tries here. And you can see he's going to control this leg, and he's going to take this leg, and what he's going to do is he's going to move it over here. Now, he doesn't really complete the sweep and come out on top the appropriate way. He kind of goes the opposite way, but it's good enough to create a scramble. So watch what he does here. Okay, so Elkins might know that he's in trouble here. So he kind of flattens the guy down and tries to beat on him. But watch the legs here. All right, it looks to me like he's going to, let's see, he's going to use the instep, there it is, to bring his leg. You can see the leg is between the legs of Michael Johnson. Now, Johnson, like a true, this is not, I mean, it's not even a true deep half, because a true deep half is you're using your leg to scoop theirs and to get underneath. So it's a modified thing. I think he's just trying in the moment, but he at least gets his leg, you get the leg of Darren Elkins to come this way, which brings his body over that way too, right? See how it created daylight? And you can see Darren Elkins' leg is that way. It brought his base up and brought his leg over, and that creates a bit of a back door. Now, he's got this underhook here, right? That prevents Michael Johnson from rolling the correct way, which would be this way on top. He can't do that because the underhook would prevent him from rolling. So Darren Elkins knows which way he's going to go. He's going to pop out and corkscrew like that. He's going to come out the other way. What you would need from a deep half is, one of the ways to always shut down deep half is people will tuck, they have this hand underneath the leg. What they'll often do is they'll tuck this hand away. They'll tuck it under a leg or something, even under your own leg, because if someone underhooks it, you can't roll. And Darren Elkins knows that. He catches it before it even goes anywhere. So he knows there's only one way for this person to go, which is to corkscrew the other way, which he does. He gets to his base. Look who is in motion for the turn before the other person has even captured their base. Who do you think's going to win? Who do you think's going to win? Very easy call. Now, this was what was interesting to me. Michael Johnson catches the leg here. He catches the leg. That's not nothing. You would want to catch him at the hip and then be able to create separation from there. but he catches him at the leg. That's pretty good, man. That's if you can like get your hands together and then suck it in on him, and then maybe try and stand, try to drive forward, try to do something, and then maybe switch hands, then double off to the other side. I don't know. But here's the crazy part about it: he must have felt pressure because he just lets it go. This is, I mean, I don't know why he let it go. He just let it go. It wasn't like Elkins rotated around, forcing some kind of shoulder uncomfortability with the angle. He just let it go. And so, look, who's going to win? High hips is always going to win. Who's got the high hips here? Whose hips are higher in the air than the other guys? Darren Elkins. He's going to win, right? Boom, comes up and takes the back. And what does he do? Michael Johnson gets to his base at the wrong time. Now is when you want to stay on your base. When they come around, you want to work from turtle. Now, maybe he thought, well, I don't want to be behind, I don't want this guy behind me with that same grip that Kamaru Usman got Emil Meek with. Fair enough. I mean, who would? But as he stands, he stands too slow. So he kind of stands. Now look at his base here. This is not great, but you at least have your base is down, right? Now your base is up a little bit, and it's less stable because you go on one knee. So what do you think Darren Elkins is going to do? He's going to drag him and snatch him, BJ Penn style, off of his base, right? And he's going to snatch him backward to a degree where this is like, it'd be one thing if he fell to the side. That'd be better. Or actually even on this side, since the choking arm is over the top. That's the way you would want to go. But he snatches him backwards and then puts the hook in because there's no protection here. He never keeps his elbow inside to prevent that from happening, which could have been potentially beneficial if you wanted to turn and slide once underneath, right? So there he goes. Boom. Pulls him backwards. So here you go. Now, they hand fight for a little bit, which we don't go into. Michael Johnson does a pretty good job of hand fighting. But here he is. He has the body triangle, and then he scooped the leg. The problem for me here for Michael Johnson is that he doesn't do a lot to address this. He doesn't roll to this side and then try and break the integrity of that, which is really what you need. You got to get your leg out of here. You got to get the foot down on the side, right? That's the only way to put pressure on it to then be able to slide yourself or to get them to move or at least to nullify its best. And you can see here there's separation between chest and back. So what happens is Darren Elkins slides it through. If that choke is not on, but this is interesting. Michael Johnson wasn't really like fighting the hands all that well. He has his hands up here. His chin's probably not tucked enough. And so Elkins slides it through and then takes his hand to the outside of Michael Johnson's to, like, imagine you're trying to shove a screw through. He kind of holds one hand in place and then drives the fist through on the other side. See that? He holds his hand like Michael Johnson's putting up his hand to prevent being choked. Elkins puts his hand on top of it. I've not seen that before. That's nice. Slides it through. Now he's chest to back. This is a much tighter position. Look at this. His back up off the mat. He's not trying to like bring him to him. He's going to him while controlling his torso and his waist as well. Goes up to him, shoves it through, tries to grab for the bicep, gets it a little bit, but then just slides it back to the gable grip. All right? So here you go. Here's that. Watch this. Then he's going to what? Look at here. He's got the grip locked up. Watch the elbow here. Ready? Just pay attention to the elbow here. Boop. He's going to drop that thing hard. Hard. He's going to be using those rhomboids in the back to really pull some scapular retraction up in this bitch. All right? Boom. Pulls it back. Okay? Now look at this. Look at the position here of Michael Johnson. Watch him get bowed out. Is that crazy? Look at this one more time. Just watch the body here. Look at how it goes from neutral to bowed. Look at that. Crazy, right? Now look at the choke here. The choke is on top of the chin. I've been seeing this more and more. I don't know who figured this out, but it's genius. All you got to do, if you can get it just right to sit on top of the chin, is to pull, rotate the choke to the choking arm, pull, and then drive your hips, and then rotate back. And then the arm just kind of falls into the groove. You see that? It just naturally slides right in and under. And at that point, you're bowing them out. The choke is deep. You've got the body triangle, and that's all she wrote. Pretty impressive stuff. Let's take a look at that choke in video just to get an appreciation for what that would be like. And last but not least, let's take a look at what's coming up in the week ahead. Two major events. What a big weekend we have coming up. Bellator 192, Lima versus McDonald. This, of course, will be on Saturday at the Forum in Inglewood, California on the Paramount Network. Douglas Lima will be defending his welterweight title against Roy McDonald in the double main / co-main event. Your new main event, Quentin Jackson versus Chael Sonnen from the heavyweight Grand Prix. Michael Chandler versus Goichi Yamauchi. Georgi Karakanian taking on Henry Corrales. Aaron Pico is back against Shane Crutchin. Also on the prelim card, Joey Davis, the outstanding collegiate wrestler. Conry Gracie, the son of Hoyce. Haim Ghazali, Johnny Cisneros, and some other ones as well. So be on the lookout for that. And then, of course, your crown jewel, if I'm just speaking from my personal opinion, Stipe Miocic taking on Francis Ngannou. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, folks. Daniel Cormier versus Volkan Oezdemir. Calvin Kattar versus Shane Burgos. John Vellante versus Francis Barbosa. Thomas Almeida is back against Rob Font. That's your pay-per-view main card. On the prelim card, Kyle Bochniak versus Brandon Davis. Abdul Razak Al Hassan is going to run it back against Sabah Homasi. Dustin Ortiz is back against Alexandre Pantoja. That should be a fun one. Dan Iggy, I'm not sure how I pronounce this, and then versus Julio Arce. Then you go to Enrique Barzola versus Matt Bassett. This is on your Fight Pass portion. Marina Moroz taking on Jamie Moyle, and then Islam Makhachev is back versus Gleason Tebow, who is also back. So that should be a lot of fun as well. Okay, what did I miss? What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Shoot me an email, lukethomasnews@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can find me there, Luke Thomas News as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and until next time, enjoy the fights.